The parable of the wedding feast from Matthew chapter 22 brings out the reasons for missing out the great feast and ways to overcome, to capture the eternity with Christ's grace. What do we miss out in the banquet? Is it the right clothes? Is it the disposition? Do we not in wavelength with God's way of thinking? What do we miss out in spirituality, in following Christ? And what are the ways to overcome? Certainly, here are the reasons the guest missed out the great feast in the parable of the wedding feast in Matthew chapter 22. The invited guests were preoccupied with their own affairs. The reasons for missing out the banquet: preoccupation with worldly concerns. Distraction with worldly matters and priorities can lead to missing out on God's invitation. In the parable, the invited guests were preoccupied with their own affairs, in silence, in prayer, in meditation. Ask yourself, what are the preoccupations that bugs your life, that keeps you away from God's invitation in your life? Excuses and lack of commitment. Making excuses and being reluctant to commit to the invitation can hinder participation in the feast. The guests in the parable presented various excuses to decline the invitation. I'm going to the farm. I'm going to the club. I'm going to the work. I'm going to the meeting. Excuses. The moment I commit to God's will that calls for change, that calls for dynamic living, one of the reasons to miss out is excuses and lack of commitment in Christian life. Pride and self-importance. Pride and a sense of self-importance can prevent individuals from accepting invitations humbly. The guests in the parable of the wedding feast may have felt their own affairs were more important than invitation. Very many times, I leave. At the end of my life, I can do a confession. I can get the extreme unction or the sacrament of the saint, and God will take me into eternity. Procrastination. But what happens is, there should be an awareness where I move from pride and self-importance. The last missing out is resistance to change or discomfort. A resistance to stepping out of one's comfort zone or facing unfamiliar circumstances can deter individuals from accepting invitations. In the parables, the invited guest may have been resistant to leaving their routine or comfort. Resistance to change or discomfort is a way to miss out the kingdom of God. In prayer, ask yourself in all sincerity, what are the preoccupations with worldly concerns? What are the excuses and lack of commitment I have in my Christian life? The pride, ego, self-importance that deter the banquet, resistance to change or discomfort, are pointers towards missing out the kingdom values. How to overcome? Individuals can overcome the reasons for missing out on God's invitation to the great feast. The ways to overcome the missing out are: prioritize God in your life. Cultivate a mindset where God is your top priority. Dedicate time for prayer, reflection, spiritual growth, ensuring God is at the center of your daily activity. If you're a young person, there are so many apps available. Use an app. Use a daily meditation. Say the morning prayer, evening prayer, afternoon prayer. Say the matins, compline. Whatever is comfortable. Do the divine office. Make a time for prayer, reflection, and spiritual growth. Let your priority be God in your life. Eliminate excuses through action. Instead of making excuses, take actionable steps forward, accepting God's invitation. Challenge yourself to overcome hindrances and actively engage with your faith and community. Practice humility and gratitude. Cultivate a humble and grateful heart, recognizing the immense privilege of God's invitation. Let go of pride and embrace the invitation with humility and thanksgiving. Embrace change and stepping out. Be open to change and stepping out of your comfort zone. Accept new opportunities that align with God's calling, even if they seem unfamiliar or challenging initially. Embrace unfamiliar. Let the unfamiliar become familiar because God is with us. By addressing these barriers and actively working to prioritize God, eliminate excuses, practice humility, and embrace change, individuals who are Christians can overcome the reasons for missing out on God's invitation to the great feast. This enables a richer, more fulfilling relationship with God and deeper experience of the heavenly banquet. Missing out over ways to overcome. We miss out by preoccupation with worldly concerns, excuses and lack of commitment, pride and self-importance, resistance to change or discomfort. We overcome and be part of the kingdom banquet, eternity, by prioritizing God in our life, eliminating excuses through action, by practicing humility and gratitude, and embracing change and stepping out. Here, the living God, Jesus Christ, invites us to the banquet. Are you ready to practice, to be part and parcel of the divine, eternal banquet? Let your response be yes. Let me prioritize God in my life.